Welcome back to the Sense of Life podcast. I'm Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And today we are going back to the land of the rising sun. With Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind and the 1988 Hideaki Anno 1988 Hideaki Anno we're keeping that in anime series Gunbuster.
40 seconds into recording the podcast and I'm already crying. we have to put the stereotypical "we just went to Japan" music, like when you say that. I can't even remember, like the piece has got to be called like Sakura for like the gong. Pedal. Yeah.
Getting racist in the first 40 seconds. Let's
go. Yeah. All right. But it's Japan, so they're like also racist, so it's fine.
Yeah. In a good way.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're talking about the first Hayao Miyazaki movie that he did. I guess he technically also did a Lupin film. He was a director on that.
Yeah.
But I guess like as far as his own creation, Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind is based on a manga that I think
he also wrote.
He wrote the manga for that as well. So all of his talk of hating anime and otakus, he fucking made manga, dude. He's just as responsible.
Well, yeah, it's like me when like I like of course right off the bat comparing myself to Hayao Miyazaki.
Hayao Miyazaki is just like me.
He's like literally me,
he's
bro.
Literally me.
It's like when I like tell people that like the nerds of today are like fucking posers, because like I was like a JRPG weeb when like it still wasn't quite cool yet.
You were a JRPG Kingdom Hearts kid.
Yeah.
In the early 2000s, so
can you imagine, like it's like 2011, I'm in 6th grade trying to describe Final Fantasy VII to a jock.
Yeah.
It's only like the law that kept me from getting shoved into a locker. Like, when people were talking about like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, I was talking about Final Fantasy 5, you know?
Yeah. There was a tweet I saw the other day where it was Neil deGrasse Tyson. He says, "Actually, due to my body dimensions, it's physically impossible for you to shove me into a locker."
Yeah, didn't he come out because of like the Dune sandworm thing?
He was like that. The worm couldn't tunnel straight forward or whatever. And there's like, there was just a ton of memes.
Fucking loser.
Ton of memes going around, just like of Neil deGrasse Tyson, nitpicking things. And it's always fun when the internet teams up to make fun of that fucking guy.
Yeah, it's like that one like unlikely alliance meme of like all of the like King Arthur and his knights like
they put all
putting their swords in the center, and it's hating Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah. Oh my god. He had I remember one of the funniest things that happened was like he kept doing this stupid bullshit where he tweets awful things. That's his entire thing now. And one of them is someone replied with this screenshot of every time he has tweeted something along the lines of like, if you kiss a mirror, you can only kiss yourself on the lips. And it's like, that's a fucking weird thing to tweet like 8 times, Neil. Get the fuck out of here. Like
I saw one tweet that was like, how is every time a movie comes out, like a known rapist is gonna come out and talk about this? I'm like, please don't make me defend Neil deGrasse Tyson today.
Yeah,
I already hate him.
I think he did get like some Me Too allegations or whatever.
Yeah, I think Lawrence Krauss had one too that was really gay.
Yeah, I instantly don't believe any of that. So
yeah, It's the official Sense of Life position to not believe women.
Yeah, take them to court, prove it with facts, and then we'll talk. That's called the scientific method that Neil deGrasse Tyson loves so much. So
yeah, the one place where he's like actually right to do that.
Tarantino, I reject your hypothesis.
Yeah. Anyway, Hayao Miyazaki.
Yeah. So, this is the first Hayao Miyazaki film that you've seen, I believe. You said that.
Yes.
And
Yes. Yeah.
I was not a Studio Ghibli child. I did not watch any of the Studio Ghibli movies growing up.
Yeah.
But I did watch probably a decent chunk of their catalog, like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I thought it was pretty good. Most of the ones that I watched were actually like late 90s, early 2000s ones. So I did watch Nausicaä back then.
Right.
I didn't remember as much of it as I thought I did, because this time around watching it, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Like it didn't stick with me as much as the other ones, but that's not to say it was bad, because I actually really liked Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind. I think I'm trying to shorten that to Nausicaä, not calling it the whole fucking sentence.
Right, yeah. People always do it as like acronyms now, so like N-O...
N-O-T-V-O-T-W. That sucks.
That's
needs a better acronym.
NOV-T-W.
You could just get rid of the ofs and thes and just call it NVW.
Yeah.
But no, I'm just gonna say Nausicaä.
Yeah. I wanted to, because I was thinking to myself yesterday that I wanted to try and because I think I have on the DVD. I think I have a dubbed version, because I wanted to try to like fit in watching the dubbed, because we watched the subtitled.
Yeah.
Just so to see if I could, because the like exact plot of this movie did not really sink in. I just kind of watched it as like a silent film. The way we were watching it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of Miyazaki films are kind of like that, where the plot isn't really like this sort of, typical 3-act structure kind of deal.
Yeah, it's like that old YouTube video essay channel, Every Frame of Painting. That concept kind of applies here. I mean, especially given that it's animation, like that comparison is pretty apt to make.
Every frame is a painting.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
I always like those film directors that talk about, like David Lynch talks about how the reason he became a director is he wanted to see paintings move. And there's Peter Greenaway who said that the reason he became a film director is because he was always sad that paintings didn't have soundtracks.
Yeah. Now, I am kind of curious if you tried to experience this movie as a silent film where all you had was like the ambient sounds of nature that the movie has, and the Joe Hisaishi soundtrack.
Yeah.
How that would be as an experience?
That's basically what it felt like when I was watching it.
Yeah.
It was like all of the dialogue, I was like, I don't know what's happening. I was kind of tuning in and out of it, but I was just watching all the pretty pictures. I was like, this is cool.
It's interesting, the kind of contrast of like the two biggest directors that Joe Hisaishi is known for like kind of collaborating with is like Hayao Miyazaki, who makes kids movies, and Takeshi Kitano, who does not, yeah. I don't know what you could you can't really like narrow down his filmography into like, I guess a lot of it is crime drama, I guess, but there's also a lot of comedy in there, and
although I mean
he's
like
experimenting with other stuff too.
Like I guess in Japan the idea of like a kids movie, quote unquote, like people watch like show Kill Bill to their kids when they're like 2, and they think it's a comedy.
Yeah, I mean, on some level, Kill Bill is a comedy. It's a very funny movie.
It's a funny movie, but it's not really a comedy.
Right? Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, they view it as like, they're just like dying, and it's hilarious.
Yeah, a little kid will find someone dying in a movie fucking hilarious. I mean, I do it too. Yeah. I'm an adult.
I mean,
and
same.
Yeah.
I'm just taller now,
I'm just taller now. Yeah. It's I mean, I guess when I was a kid, I also watched things that wouldn't be typically classified as kids movies.
Yeah.
Like I fucking played Halo 2 when I was like 6 or 7, which that game is rated M for mature. So I was like a full decade behind the age rating for that game.
Yeah.
Which, and it's I honestly think that you probably should show your children more mature stories.
Yeah.
But I mean, these sort of like movies, quote unquote, made for kids, often do have pretty clear like moral lessons to be taken from them as well.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be like that, like children's entertainment, quote unquote, was not like childish entertainment.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was entertainment for children, but not like retarded.
Mm-hmm.
You and I think that largely applies to Miyazaki's work. Um, I I even wonder like if a child experienced the Miyazaki films the way I did, as like basically a silent movie with like people like talking some quacky language they don't get.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if you weren't paying attention to the subtitles, yeah, you basically did experience it as a silent film because it was just fucking all Japanese.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it.
It's definitely an interesting way to experience the film.
Yeah,
where you just watch it.
Yeah, I had many moments where I was just like kind of half paying attention, but it was mostly just because I was trying to see if I could discern what the words were without the subtitles. So it was like,
yeah,
I guess I also kind of experienced it in the same way.
Live IRL Duolingo just happening watching a movie.
And we actually watched the movie with Quinn, friend of the podcast, and was Michael there? I think he was.
I feel like Michael was there.
He's often slinking around in the background behind the scenes doing some shady business.
Just schlonking eggs,
Anyway, and Quinn was
I think it's when you like drink an egg raw. I think.
I thought you meant like he just had like a giant freezer bag full of like hard boiled eggs, and he was just chomping them down. The weirdest movie theater snack ever. Just some guy with a fucking big bag of hard boiled eggs.
Yeah, that's like serial killer behavior. Kill him.
But yeah, we watched it with Quinn, who
on Molyneux with the eggs in the back.
Yeah. And Quinn was he had seen this movie when he was a kid. Apparently enough times that he remembered a lot of the lines, like a decent chunk of the dialogue from the movie, to the point where he was constantly like, "Oh, that line is different in the English one." Because a lot of the time with media that has subtitles, they'll just put one subtitle track in that is supposed to be for the English and, like, say it was a foreign media or whatever. It was like, the Japanese original audio and then the English dubbing. Oftentimes, there's just one set of English subtitles, and it's for the English dub. But they actually had a subtitle track specifically for the Japanese one, because it did say different things than what he was expecting the subtitles to say.
Right, yeah.
That is actually a great fear of mine, is that the localizers get their fucking grubby hands on the subtitles too, where like there isn't even a separate track for the original audio. I just have to know that what I'm hearing is their fucking amogus fucking sussy bullshit, where they're just like throwing in pop culture references that make no fucking sense.
Yeah, that's even like more of a reason to, one, enjoy a movie like this as a silent movie.
Yeah.
Or two, to just watch a dub. Right. Because the sub might just be mangled by a localizer.
The sub might be compromised.
Yeah. The sub op, the subtitle psyop, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's not that I suppose not that you would really do anything that localizers get their typical bullshit going in a fucking Miyazaki movie. It'd be weird.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, it is like a really cool like far in the future sci-fi story, I guess, but most of the technology they have is like extremely regressed.
I think they call it like dystopian fantasy or whatever.
Yeah.
It's more Mad Max than like Blade Runner.
Right, yeah, that's a good
At least in like technological, not like thematic, but just like the technology that's available. Oh,
On.
We're arfing. Get a guest star on the podcast.
There's my dog barking in the background. Hold on. I think we're fine. Yeah, I really like the aesthetic of this, where you've got the kind of like relatively normal looking Wind Valley people. I mean, I guess they've got some silly looking hats, but
yeah.
Other than that, they kind of just look like peasants. And then the fucking Tolmekians or whatever they were called.
Yeah.
The fuck is that? Yeah, Tolmekians. I had it right. They are like these dudes in like knight's armor that are also flying around in airplanes and have like World War One style tanks.
Right.
It's a really cool like aesthetic mashup going on there.
Yeah, I think this is what they refer to as steampunk. Yeah, basically,
I guess. Or
like,
so.
I don't know that all the punk labels I find annoying.
Yeah.
I'll let cyberpunk slide because it's like the first one and the one that feels the most cohesive. Right. But even that one is like, everyone talks about it like a genre, but it's really just more of like an aesthetic.
It's an aesthetic and a generally perceived idea of what kind of world it's going to be.
Yeah,
which isn't really a genre.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, it describes the story okay.
Yeah,
but
the funny thing is that people that treat it like a genre will also almost always say that every piece of cyberpunk media is anti-capitalist at its core.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what comes of treating it as a genre, where you just have an expectation of the exact message that is going to be spoon-fed to you.
Yeah.
Because the funny thing is, like,
which is what the concept of quote media literacy unquote is.
Yeah, media literacy is when you reduce everything down to I agree with this entirely, and then you happily eat the slop.
Yeah, Yerk P, who I follow on Twitter, he does a lot of these like threads on media literacy, quote unquote. I think he was on Getting Lit talking about this. He kind of described it perfectly, that media literacy is to like art what misinformation is to like COVID shit.
Right.
It's just like the thing to describe not fitting within the exact political position of voting blue no matter who and Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, it kind of just like falls into this kind of general feeling I've had of just a complete collapse of the idea of being curious about anything.
Yeah.
Where you have to go into a piece of media saying, okay, this agrees with me, so let's watch it and see what points they make. It's like, what? Like, get the fuck out of it. Just experience it as it is, and like try and figure out what they were going for. Like,
objectivists suffer from this too, so
they do.
Don't think
yes, that is fair.
We're not painting too broad a brush here.
We're actually broadening the brush by adding fucking objectives to it.
You're not innocent either, Randroids, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, there was a point I was going to make about cyberpunk where, like, people say that all cyberpunk is anti-capitalist, and you see these media literacy people on Twitter saying that the Cyberpunk 2077 game itself is specifically also anti-capitalist. And then you look at the things that Mike Pondsmith, the guy that made the tabletop game that also consulted with CD Projekt Red when they made the game.
Yeah, he was like a libertarian, basically.
He's basically like a libertarian, and he essentially just says, like, his point was that within the confines of a cyberpunk story, the main kind of thing that connects it, if you were to categorize it as a genre, I guess, is like most of the time the aesthetic is going for that within the world of cyberpunk, it's not about saving the world, it's about saving yourself. It is an internal struggle. And you can see that going all the way back to like the first Blade Runner. It's not about Deckard trying to fucking free the replicants. It's about Deckard trying to like understand something about himself and
And
part
also
that he's playing in all of this.
The replicant doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's
by the end.
Yeah, exactly, and
yeah,
that's kind of what that was going for. Great cyberpunk tangent of the Nausicaä film. And but yeah, I
mean,
like,
they say the same thing about steampunk, or I guess diesel punk. Oh God, have you heard this? The word diesel punk.
I have heard of it. I don't care for it.
Hate it. Don't like the word.
That stuff is all, if you were to treat it as a genre. Aesthetically, it's all going for like a critique of late 19th century capitalism.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, you work at the company store, and we only pay you in currency that's good at our own store. We wouldn't want you buying any products that are no good.
That's I'm sure there's some people out there that are making diesel punk that's not like dumb.
It's not
but
dumb.
Please drop the word diesel punk.
Yeah.
I can't. I can't do it.
Yeah.
And I mean, the same with like the anti-capitalist stuff. They do that with steampunk too. Like people talk about Final Fantasy VII all the time as like it's a critique of capitalism, and I guess it kind of is, but again, like we have talked about before with like, or I don't know if we've talked about it, but I've like tweeted about it about BioShock and Ayn Rand. Even when you like try to criticize something and you don't, if you're not adhering to reality itself, whatever you criticize is going to fall apart and just become part of reality, because that's how it works. A is A, regardless of what you say.
Yeah, if you are an artist and you are trying to critique something, this is what you said about Rorschach, I think.
Rorschach or BioShock, one of the two.
Where basically, like, if you are an artist and you have bad premises, but you still are honest enough with yourself to conform to reality.
Yeah.
Your bad premises in your art, when you present them in a way that is supposed to be critical of a thing that you perceive as bad, the final product is going to loop back around to adhering to reality, because you're being honest with yourself in the way you present things.
Yeah.
And you just fail at making your point, because like anyone with proper values is going to go, well, Rorschach is right at the end, is fine, regardless of all these other personal flaws that he allegedly has. I haven't read the fucking comic book, but like in the context of what is happening at the end, the principle behind what he's doing is correct. And the same kind of goes for BioShock, where I actually replied to a tweet about this the other day, where or actually yesterday, where it is more a critique of anarcho-capitalism than objectivism, even though there's a bunch of like objectivist flavoring in there.
Yeah.
Like Andrew Ryan just being like Ayn Rand, Andrew Ryan. But it's like everything that caused the downfall in that world was a result of him failing to adhere to his principles or just being a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Like none of that makes sense as an actual coherent critique of an ideology, unless your critique of the ideology is you can't possibly be consistent, which people can be consistent. So your critique is then just hinging on a character flaw of a person, not like their idea.
Yeah. It's hinging on the kind of naturalistic fallacy of like that people are not capable of values, basically.
Right.
And it just falls apart. It's like the free will thing with Sam Harris, whatever. It's like you saying you don't have free will is a refutation of the idea that you don't have free will.
Right. If you're going to go around writing books, you're going around writing books about how people should act.
Yeah.
And you criticize ideologies and the actions of like Islamists and stuff, but you don't believe that they have the free will to actually like act.
Yeah.
So does he view his books on how you should act as simply like a piece of code that is being implanted in your brain that is then causing your brain to act a certain way?
I guess so.
What an idiot. Fuck Sam Harris.
I was talking Solaris on the Rare Candy podcast, and I think we linked to that in the last episode.
Yeah.
We had gotten onto the topic of like materialism, and kind of Sam Harris and whatnot, and I had talked about, and I think I had gotten this from Ayn Rand discussing it at some point, maybe it came from something else, I don't know, but the essence of materialism is like if you are a materialist, like through and through, like the like end, like what's the word I'm looking for? The logical conclusion of materialism is just a complete rejection of consciousness as this thing that exists.
Yeah.
And within objectivism, you talk a lot about like the primacy of existence versus the primacy of consciousness, whereas objectivism is holds the primacy of existence as the main axiom, but that does not preclude the non-existence of consciousness, or preclude the existence of. However, I think you know what I mean. What I'm trying to say.
It does not therefore say that consciousness doesn't exist.
Yeah, but a materialist would, a true blue materialist,
right,
which is kind of what Sam Harris is doing. And I know we're like way off of Nausicaä at this point. I'm just
we're gonna get some shit in the comments from fucking whatever his username is, who's
Buffo or whatever.
Yeah, Buffo the art clown. I remember it now. Yeah, about 20 like an hour-long podcast, 10 minutes spent on the film.
Yeah, and it's welcome to podcasting.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because this is as I found out recently, this is definitely not a movie review podcast.
Yeah.
I won't get into that. And the problem with that materialist rejection of consciousness is it's self-defeating. You rejecting consciousness proves that you have it.
Yeah.
It's a problem for the
it's a Symbiont Circle. You must understand this.
Yeah. Everything leads back to Star Wars, is what I'm saying.
But as far as getting back to Nausicaä, and this is actually a separate tangent, but is actually related to the movie.
Hell yeah.
You stuck around for part of it, but then you had to leave because you had like a headache going into the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
We watched Starship Troopers the day before we watched Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind, and I don't know if you've any viewers out there have seen both of those movies, but Starship Troopers is about well, if Verhoeven is to be believed, the guy that made the movie. It's a critique of fascism and alienating and hating the other or whatever bullshit.
Yeah.
But really, it's about killing the fucking bug, and everyone cheers at the end when they're killing the bugs. And it's like,
afraid. Yeah.
It's like, everyone's cheering, they're murdering the bugs. And this movie is explicitly, the main character is like, no, don't kill the bugs. The bugs are
this
good.
movie is about what Verhoeven thinks Starship Troopers is about and fails to do.
Yeah. Because you actually have characters explicitly acting as opposed to being a satirical caricature that has no fucking seriousness behind it.
The more I think about that Starship Troopers movie, the more I'm just supremely annoyed by it.
Yeah.
I love Verhoeven, but I want to read the Heinlein novel, and we might do it for the podcast at some point.
That'd be cool. That guy is like an anomaly. Like there is so much slander about there's so much slander about his like what his actual political views are, because he said things where like he said like, next to me, Ayn Rand is a fucking communist or whatever. Like, that's an actual quote from him.
Fucking Christ.
Yeah, he I don't think he said fucking communist, but like, he said something like that. But then like he made Starship Troopers, and because that movie portrays like a society with a strong military, and like there is sort of like a human bond and fellowship in it, people say that like Heinlein was a fascist, which is bizarre because it would be one thing if he actually like went out and said he was a fascist, but I don't think he ever did, and he was pretty reclusive in his later years, to my knowledge.
Right.
So like,
yeah.
That's why I said he was an anomaly, because like he said a couple things, and then people were like, "Oh, based off the themes in this book, he's this thing." It's like I don't think you're reading that right.
Yeah,
it could just be like,
I don't know about that.
It could just be like pro-human fucking propaganda. And you know what, my brother in Christ, it worked. Double the defense budget.
I was just talking about that meme at work today.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
that's great.
What
were you gonna say?
What was I gonna say? Fuck. Anyway, go on. It probably was important.
Fair enough. But yeah, Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind, which we basically said nothing about, and we're half an hour in.
Yeah.
Like, it does a really good job kind of getting to its sort of there's kind of like a kind of consistent theme throughout a lot of Ghibli movies, which is almost like informed by like this sort of Shintoist view of existence, where like I guess a lot of Eastern philosophy is kind of about like balance in a sense, and
that's where George Lucas gets it.
Yeah, and that's kind of what this movie is about, because the way that the world has been destroyed gave rise to these toxic jungles, as they're called in the English dub, but I think they're called like the toxic sea in the Japanese audio. There's a whole thing about that when we were watching it. But it's basically like these giant, like, it almost makes the characters look like shrunken down little people in like a giant version of like, there's like giant mold things and like things that look like giant flowers and stuff. So it makes humans look small within the confines of like these little jungles. And the air is just like poisonous. But at the same time, there's like those giant ohm bugs that have like a bunch of eyes.
Yeah.
And there's like it is kind of, I jokingly referenced the symbiotic circle thing from the Phantom Menace earlier, but that's kind of what this movie is about, where like the ohms I think in whatever they do kind of stops the overall the toxic forest thing from completely overriding humanity. But then humanity tries to destroy the toxic forest, and then it freaks out these giant bugs, and they just like destroy everything. So there's kind of like this sort of delicate balance of destruction and like coexistence going on.
So it's actually like even more like sophisticated than the like idea that Verhoeven was trying to get across in Starship Troopers, which is that
it's the benevolent universe version of that, where Verhoeven
exactly.
Verhoeven goes, humans are bad and the bugs are bad, because there are idiots on Twitter who think that the bugs are like the victim, but it's like, I think if you watch the movie, because you didn't get to the end of it, but by the end of it, it's like,
I've seen it before.
Oh, you have seen Starship Troopers before? Okay.
Yeah, I think we watched it in VC.
Okay, yeah. So like the best interpretation you could get from that, where humanity is bad, is that you could say they are on the same level as the bugs, because the bugs are a hive mind that controls all of their lower drones with these bug brains that suck out people's brains to find out what they know so that they can better destroy their enemy. And then humanity has their higher level government people that are psychic, which in a sense is kind of like being a hive mind, because by the end of the movie, Neil Patrick Harris's character, we're throwing Starship Troopers into this fucking review, by the way, I guess.
Yeah.
By the end of that movie, Neil Patrick Harris's character can telepathically communicate with Rico, which means like, in a sense, it's kind of like the hive mind of the bugs. And
so it's trying to draw this like kind of shoddy connection, kind of like Ayn Rand's connection of like between fascism and communism as various forms of collectivism.
Right, but I guess within the confines of
inept. It's an inept satire. That's the problem with the movie.
Within the confines of the universe, everybody is bad in that reading, because the bugs are. If you're saying it's a critique of humanity, they're just adopting aspects of the bugs, because like the bugs suck people's brains out to figure out how to destroy them. And the movie ends with them capturing a brain bug so that they can probe it to better understand how to destroy the bugs. Like they're acting in the same manner. But Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind kind of goes for a completely different approach, where it's like no, the bugs aren't evil. Neither is humanity. At its core, everything is good. The universe is benevolent, and you have to like kind of take a step back and have some perspective and think about the nature of reality to understand. You can't just blindly go in and say, let's destroy this entire thing, because then it's just going to backfire and fuck you up.
And
you kind of have
also
to have
can't
the balance, as it were.
Yeah, and you also can't treat like nature as good qua nature. It's at insofar as it's within this like symbiont circle, to bring it back to old Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
Which it's true. It's like the alligator that has like the bird that like cleans it off or whatever. So that like this symbiotic mutualist relationships is getting back to like 9th grade biology.
They call it fucking mutual altruism or whatever, which is we won't get into that, but it's not.
Yeah,
it's not altruism.
Trade is what it is.
Essentially. And like
trade really more applies to human beings, because that has to do with like having values, and this is more about anyway, that's more like heavy duty. Like speaking of which, I was at a Half Price Books and I saw a copy of Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology. Yeah, just in the wild. And I was like,
that's, of all the fucking objectivist books to find in the wild, I think it would be like Atlas Shrugged or Fountainhead, but Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology, Jesus.
I almost bought it, but it was like, one, I'm trying not to like buy frivolous shit, and there's no way I'm going to read that anytime soon. And two, I was like, I'm also just not ready to read that anytime soon.
Yeah.
But I don't know where that came from, but
in a lot of ways, this also kind of reminds me of. I'm just trying to like tangentially reach out to other pieces of art where it has like a similar kind of message to it.
Michael Crichton, really. Like I haven't gotten all the way through Jurassic Park, but I kind of had to stop reading it to take up Dune.
Yeah,
but there's a lot in Jurassic Park that eventually we'll get that episode done at some point. I don't know.
Yeah. It's on the back burner, but it is still cooking.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll still happen.
The back burner is still on. It is cooking.
Yeah, a lot of Jurassic Park is about, like particularly Ian Malcolm, who is the what's the guy's name in the movie? Character's name is Ian Malcolm. Famous actor. In all the memes.
Jeff Goldblum?
Jeff Goldblum. Jeff Goldblum's character in the movie.
Yeah.
It's a lot of Ian Malcolm like describing about his like chaos theory thing, which is kind of nonsense, but it's as a
device within the story.
Yeah. But he's really talking about how, I mean, it's the basic idea of like bringing animals that went extinct for a reason into the modern era where they cannot survive and we cannot survive with them, just disrupts the entirety of nature. And it's a problem. And so it becomes about like this, like, we, again, back to the Solaris episode of Rare Candy, we were talking about the hubris of science and viewing science as this way to, like, I guess, achieve some kind of power rather than as just a method to deduce what reality is.
Yeah, I think one of the points that is made in the book, I haven't gotten to the book yet, but I remember reading, this is actually a tweet from Avid Film Buff Twitter about it, where he said that the book better explains Ian Malcolm's position than the movie does.
It does.
Where essentially, like, the idea is that because of the way science works, where like all of the knowledge of these scientific discoveries is passed on to the next person, it doesn't take any actual virtue or values to attain what has already been discovered. So there is no discipline required to just kind of shit out these dinosaurs with no fucking idea about like what you're doing, why you're doing it, or any sort of thing like that. It's just kind of like it fell into your lap because of the work of other people, and now you're disrupting things that shouldn't be disrupted.
It's that classic quote of like they were spent all the time thinking about why they could and not enough time thinking about why they should.
Right.
And I think this applies a lot to Nausicaä as well, about the humans interacting with the bugs, but not respecting what they do.
Yeah.
And I guess you could get into like more. I'm not going to use the word "quote unquote" problematic to describe this, but more anti-life, malevolent universe, Paul Verhoeven ways to apply this like information that you get in, like, say, defacing a painting to protest Israel or something. And that becomes a problem. But just being aware of what reality is and what the role of science is as a tool for figuring out what reality is, and not a tool for making reality what it isn't.
Yeah.
I think
you know what's actually kind of interesting now that I'm really thinking about this movie, like trying to organize my thoughts into like something to say about it.
Yeah.
It would have been interesting to pair this with specifically another Studio Ghibli film, Princess Mononoke, because it is essentially kind of like a retelling of this story.
Sure.
In its main theme of sort of like this sort of tipping the balance in a way that is going to destroy everything, as opposed to what you thought it would do, where you would be able to command everything when you're actually you're destroying the foundation beneath you. Though obviously that story has a lot of other things going for it as well that are different. But even down to like by the end of the movie, when Nausicaä is revealed to be this prophesized savior that will kind of lead humanity forward, the prophecy is fulfilled by her compassion for the bugs, because she stops them from like torturing the fucking baby bug to lure all the big herd of bugs to destroy the Tolmekians in her valley.
Yeah.
And the this sort of like bridging of like this act of compassion between humanity and the Ohm kind of is what leads to a better future in that way. And by the end of the movie, there is non-toxic plants growing within the toxic jungle. So it's almost as if the toxicity of the jungle is literally like a manifestation of how am I gonna put this? It's almost like it's similar to in Princess Mononoke, how like there is a disease that is ravaging the land, and the main character gets infected with this like disease from this giant raging boar. And this sickness is basically like the idea of hatred and evil, like not personified, but like condensed into like a physical entity in a sense.
Yeah,
you can almost see that kind of same thing being applied to the toxicity of the jungle, because it's making it so that humanity can't even really step outside of their small spheres of influence without just being killed,
right,
just by the very surroundings. But by the end of the movie, it's kind of like the nature is healing meme. I don't know. Fucking the non-toxic plants are starting to grow back. So it did not require mass destruction and burning of the toxic forest to get to get it to go away and to allow humanity to prosper again. It was like
and it also didn't require the sacrifice of humanity on the altar of nature either.
Right. I think that's kind of an interesting thing that Miyazaki constantly does, is that at no point in his stories is the sacrifice of human lives and war viewed as something that was a necessary evil.
Yeah.
It's in every story that he tells, evil is not necessary. There is no necessary evil. You can simply do the right thing. And I think there is a sort of misplaced righteousness to the Tolmekians, in the sense that they want to destroy the forest because they value human life and they want humanity to kind of regain their status as they used to. But much like in Princess Mononoke, in doing that, you're only destroying yourself and you don't even realize it. And I guess in Mononoke, that kind of applies to Lady Eboshi, who is like the one that rules over this place called Iron Town, and she's kind of working for this. I think it's like the Emperor or whatever, and he wants the head of this giant creature that rules over the forest or whatever. But in killing this thing, you're not only destroying the forest but everything. So by the end of it, it's like you realize the error of your ways. She says, "I'm going to rebuild Iron Town, but better this time." So it's like there is no like humanity is bad, nature is good. It's sort of like, humanity is good, and there is goodness in existence, and you shouldn't, you shouldn't allow yourself to be pulled along as sort of like a tool for someone who would just seek to have everything destroyed. Or is too blind to see it, really, I guess.
Yeah, and you could even, to take it in a different direction, you could take that thematically in a Christian direction of the positive aspects of Christianity, of saying God describes man as stewards of the earth, and sometimes this is misapplied or used maliciously by liberals to say that we should be eco-fascists,
right?
But it's about the same thing of using the world to create flourishing for every human being as possible, because it's also up to every human being to choose make moral choices and reap the benefits of those moral choices. So
yeah, it's kind of more like the old I mean not Old Testament, but like the before the because the problem is with Christianity is the whole original sin thing.
Yeah,
like once there's you've been corrupted by the tree of whatever the fuck knowledge.
Tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah, the knowledge of good and evil. So like the I guess it's kind of like an inverse of that basic premise where humanity was supposed to be good, but by the act of becoming aware of good and evil, they're no longer good. In fact, they are tainted from birth as having original sin, which I get. Never mind. I'm not going to say that. It's kind of the inverse of that, where it's like the story basically has the premise that no, humans are good by default. And evil is that which leads you to do things that are unreasonable, that are destructive, and so on. And I think that's kind of like a pretty consistent theme with Miyazaki's movies. I know you've only just seen Nausicaä, but it's pretty much the same throughout all of them.
He seems like the type of, and I feel like a lot of the really staunch Japanese auteurs, and we're going to talk again about Hideaki Anno here shortly.
Yeah.
Are really just like retelling the same story over and over again, and just kind of like tweaking it and refining it,
right,
and making that theme more clear. I mean, with Anno, he was on Neon Genesis Evangelion for like 20-30 years, because he did the series, and then the ending to that series, and then the additional movie, and then came back 10 years later with the rebuilds, and those continued for like 14 years. There was like 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah,
so he was like stuck
really
in Evangelion. Yeah.
It's like Kojima with Metal Gear Solid, where like every game he was like, this is the last one, I want to do something else. And then Konami was like, this makes too much money, make another one. He's like, well, okay, but it'll be my thing. And then like he you never felt with those games where like it was just made for the sake of making another one, because he was such a good storyteller that it just kind of worked.
Yeah. Or like Namuro with Kingdom Hearts, where it just seems like he's never going to stop.
Yeah.
And it keeps getting weirder.
Right. But yeah, I don't know do you have much else to say about Nausicaä? I mean, we haven't really even talked about it as like a visual experience, but like it really is. It's interesting to look at animated films from Japan from like the 80s and early 90s and stuff, because it was really like it was like the peak of Japan's like economic boom, and all of these animated films, and to some degree this series as well, it was almost like an arms race of who could have like the most insane the most like crazy animation out there, the most shit going on, the most like but I guess at the same time Nausicaä kind of takes itself pretty slow and deliberate as well.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of really, really good detail work going on.
And speaking of detail work, I don't really have much else to say about Nausicaä per se, but Anno was like a protege of Miyazaki, at least as I understand it.
Yeah.
He started working at Studio Ghibli, I guess, and he was working on this film. And I think I can't remember exactly what scene it is, but I think it's most of the stuff with like the silent god, the silent warrior, the big giant like monster that's like crawling.
Right, yeah, that thing was fucked up.
Yeah, that was Anno, I believe. He like drew that, and that like sense. Whole sequence with him was all his doing.
Yeah.
So that was the like connection between these two works, was Anno working on it.
I suppose one more random point to be made about this movie, like every other scene, it's hard to tell whether or not the main character is wearing pants or just like a skirt.
Like tights or something?
Yeah, it's like tights, I guess. But like there are certain scenes where it looks like it's the exact same like skin tone as her face, but then other scenes where it's a lot less, there's a lot less redness in the color mixing to make it look like a more flesh tone. It looks more and more beige in different scenes. So it's like it's very bizarre. I was like at first I was like, oh, is she just like flying ass out right now?
There's that one really funny like clip that was going around of Hideaki Anno talking about Miyazaki and his boob physics for Nausicaä.
Oh yeah, and how big they are, and there was also a point that Miyazaki made that there was like a utilitarian purpose to the largeness, about how like she is a nurturing and comforting character, and like there are characters that like die in her fucking arms, and it's like, well, there needed to be like a soft spot there, you know? It's like, you're insane, dude, but I love it.
Amazing.
I guess this episode is coming out the day after the Oscars, and his film, The Boy and the Heron. I forget what the Japanese title is, but it's not The Boy and the Heron. That won best animated
feature, I think. Yeah,
and he didn't even show up.
And I think it was his first Oscar win, I want to say.
No, I think he won an Oscar in 2003 for Spirited Away.
Did he? I thought he was just nominated. find out.
Let me see right now. Hayao Miyazaki Oscars. Sick. His 2001 feature Spirited Away won an Academy Award for animated feature. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So
Alright.
But he didn't show up for that one either, and that one was specifically because the United States was bombing Iraq.
Yeah.
When so like Miyazaki is very much like I guess you could say he's a leftist creator in his values. He doesn't really like America all that much, and he specifically said he didn't want to come because of the war in Iraq. But I do find it kind of funny. He did show up for another award show in the United States in like the 2010s, so it's not as if he just like he's like the fucking Japanese emperor who refuses to step on foreign soil or something. But, yeah, they didn't show up for the. He's also fucking 83, so like.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect an 83-year-old to fly across the ocean to come accept an award.
Yeah, apparently he, more evidence of his like leftism or whatever. Apparently he was critical of. You remember Charlie Hebdo, the French satire magazine that got terroristed?
I remember, yeah.
10 years ago. Apparently he was critical of that magazine for publishing the content.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with Miyazaki on a lot of things, but I think the thematic elements of his art can still be approachable, even if you don't agree with a lot of his political values. And he's still a great artist, and all of his animators.
Yeah, this is why we should like not know anything about people beyond their work.
Right. You just judge the work as it is.
Yeah. It's. I mean, it's kind of like separating the art from the artist, but it's more like separating the artist's like retarded opinions from their like amazing art.
Yeah, it's funny that there are people out there that can't do that. Where they're just like, our Roman Polanski video recently had like a bunch of comments from like random people that were just like, I can't. I can't watch Roman Polanski movies or whatever. It's like, you know what? That would be good on you. If it's a good movie, it's a good movie. If an actor is a shitty person, but they make like undeniably great art, I don't think it matters that they're. It matters that they're a shitty person, but it doesn't matter if you're just watching the art or taking.
Yeah, I mean, it's also the case that like. There's this great quote. I can't remember. I saw it in like the epitaph of a book or something. Epigram, I think is
epitaph on his fucking tombstone.
Yeah. Epigram of a book. It was like all art. Every piece of art is an uncommitted crime.
Yeah.
Which I kind of like that. It's probably not like perfectly applicable all the time, but it's. The idea that like a great artist is going to be someone who is, particularly with someone like Polanski, if like you watched enough of his work, you can tell that he's a guy that exercises his demons through his art, and is trying to make something beautiful out of his capacity for evil that we all share. And he's trying to say something about that.
Or like how every Alfred Hitchcock movie is about how he is obsessed with women.
Yeah, and like hates them, but also like loves them, and like the way that like Camille Paglia talks about like that like straight men struggle with that we like straight men struggle with is like how fucking annoying women are, but also needing them all the time,
right?
And the idea that like boys of boys especially when they're born, they love their mother, but they don't respect her in any way, and they'll like hit her like for no reason.
Yeah.
Like it's just like a biological like thing that happens. It seems.
Right.
I'm not even sure how we got onto that, but
yeah. I think that's enough for Nausicaä. We're an hour in. We haven't even touched Gunbuster yet. I was also kind of skeptical about this as well, but then you said it was like a 6-episode miniseries. I was like, oh, you know what? I can be skeptical of it. It's only 6 episodes.
And they were like 30 minutes, so it wasn't
like 25 minutes or something.
Yeah. Also known as Aim for the Top or Top Onere, Tapu Onere. Narai, yeah. It's a Japanese OVA, which was a new vocab word for me not being me being a JRPG weeb and not an anime weeb.
Right.
Original video animation, which I think just refers to it's shot, like not shot, but it's like processed as a video file or something instead of like scanned on a film. I don't know. I don't really know how it works, but it's it's an OVA. I don't really know what that means.
It's an
produced
anime
by
series.
Yes, yeah. It was the directorial debut of Hideaki Anno. He's best known for Neon Genesis Evangelion, which we'll cover at some point. Produced by Bandai, Victor, and Gainax, which was the company that Hideaki Anno, I think, helped found, and also created Neon Genesis Evangelion. And I think also went bankrupt because of Neon Genesis Evangelion. It's so Gunbuster is kind of like a proto Evangelion, because again, Anno is a type of guy that seems to be kind of riffing on the same theme and trying to refine it into something more coherent every time he does something. It says the title is a combination of the titles of classic tennis manga and anime Aim for the Ace and the hit action drama Top Gun.
Yeah.
Whose plot apparently inspired Gunbuster, which, that makes sense now.
Yeah.
So Gunbuster is basically a remake of Top Gun, which is epic.
It was a really cool little series. I mean, it's like 6 episodes, so pretty much you can recommend it to anyone because it's essentially like the length of a feature-length film. Yeah, like if you were to watch all 6 episodes,
3-hour movie,
like a longer movie, yes.
Yeah.
But you could split it across a couple days, have it knocked out.
Yeah.
It has some really funny like plot moments, or just like not even really necessarily plot moments, but just like really bizarre things that just kind of make you laugh at how silly it is. Like the fact that the main character is like 15 or whatever, and she's in like a high school, and the first scene of the high school is teenage girls in these giant mechs doing push-ups and stuff and like jump rope in the mechs. And it's like, dude, that is fucking insane that you would just have like high schoolers in like millions and millions of dollars worth of military tech just like doing push-ups.
And
it's so funny.
This is like I think it's kind of like a riff on like the whole mech anime like genre,
right?
Which I guess is most like popularly shown in like Mobile Suit Gundam, where the lead of Mobile Suit Gundam is a teenage boy, and like all of these shows like have like teenage protagonists doing like military missions. And I think it's just like a kind of like a sort of like a cute affectation of this genre that's like made for kids generally.
Okay, it's there is the shoot 'em up genre of video games where you've got like you're a ship and there's a bunch of shit coming at you on the screen you got to shoot.
Like the bullet hell or whatever they call it.
Bullet hell, yeah. There's a subgenre of that is called cute 'em up, where it essentially it's just that kind of game, but everything is real cutesy and like girly and stuff. So it's kind of like that. Except not everything in this is cute and girly, except for the characters, I guess.
It's quite horny, actually.
Well, just that and like the mechs. The mechs themselves are, I guess they're more sleek than what you would expect from like mech designs of that era of anime. They're very sleek, and not very bulky either. Very very rounded in a lot of their designs, and
curvy even, you might say.
Yeah, there's childbearing hips on the mech. As I said when we were watching an episode.
There's a lot of shots in this show of like just a girl's ass in the foreground.
Oh yeah, that was hilarious.
And something else in the background.
The opening theme, the opening theme song is like a city pop sort of thing from the 80s, which is an aesthetic that, like, I guess on the internet there is kind of like a nostalgia factor for it. There's
it's like Top Gun. It's like Danger Zone, which now seeing that it's riffing on Top Gun, that makes a lot more sense.
I guess the city pop aesthetic is actually quite popular on the internet these days. Like the videos of like city pop artists get like millions of views. I think Plastic Love was like one that was really popular a couple years ago. But that is an aesthetic that we need to bring back because it rules for like opening themes to things.
It goes hard.
It does. There's a part in that, like the outfit, the uniforms that the main character and the other mech pilots wear is like their legs are just like totally bare. There's no fucking like, they're not wearing pants or anything. And during the opening theme, there is like this insane shot where like her ass just like emerges from the bottom left of the screen. It's fucking insane. You're like, what the fuck? And it's funny that you say like Hideaki Anno is kind of like that guy who's retelling the same story over and over again. And it's like the first Hideaki Anno thing that I've seen was Love and Pop, which is about teenage girls. And then we get to Gunbuster, which is also about teenage girls. It's like, okay. And he like bends the laws of reality to keep this character under the age of 18 for decades. Which is an essential part of the plot of this, is that the way that they kind of fly around in space is almost like bending
space-time.
It's like bending space-time.
This girl.
And it's like time passes quite fast around, like you'll be in this sort of like space travel thing for like 6 months. And you'll feel it for like 6 months, but the world around you has progressed 10 years. So like her friend that's in the first episode is like a mother with a small child. In the episode,
like the third episode,
and it's kind of crazy to think, like just as like a plot device where like, you know, you have to watch everyone else that you care about wither away while you kind of stay the same age. So it's it's sort of like the there's I can't remember where it comes from. It's like a quote where it's like a real soldier doesn't fight because they hate what's in front of them. They fight because they love what is beside and behind them, kind of thing. That's like you're kind of, in a sense, you're like sacrificing the time you have with the people you care about to fight this sort of evil alien thing that is trying to attack Earth in this. Because
I think also it was bugs.
Rapidly. They were kind of like giant space bugs. So this is like a very buggy episode. Bug forward.
Bug pilled.
We'll get to the pill analogy later.
And actually, And one thing I noticed when we were watching it, and I just remembered reading on the Wikipedia here, there is a in Noriko, who's the lead character, in her room, she's a fan of anime. There are posters of My Neighbor Totoro and Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind.
You had pointed out the Nausicaä poster. And then I saw the one next to it. I was like, oh, that's My Neighbor Totoro. But I had forgotten how old My Neighbor Totoro was. So I was like, for a second, I thought it was like a sneak peek, like teasing of the next fucking Ghibli film, or like, but
a Marvel post-credit scene.
It's like how Pixar will have like a fucking Woody toy on the floor or whatever in like a fucking, or like a Finding Nemo toy on the floor in Monsters Inc. And it's like, oh, that's the next Pixar movie. But
yeah.
Totoro came out like early in '88, and this came out late '88. So
they were just working on it at the same time, basically.
yeah, and it's the I guess the basic plot kind of just follows her as she consistently cries a lot.
Yeah.
Like the first like 3 or 4 episodes, she is constantly failing, but I guess she shows potential where like she's in the fight with that one student before she gets to go up into space, and it looks like she's gonna get her ass kicked, and she's getting like pounded into the ground, but then she like pulls off this insane like counter move and like fucking destroys her in the mech suit.
And this is like again like him repeating same themes, like it's like poetry, it rhymes.
Yeah.
This is a thing that I'm on like the 6th or 7th episode of Evangelion. This is a thing in Evangelion as well, of the lead character like failing upward.
Yeah.
And still like we're not sure what lesson he's learning, but we're just kind of along for the ride for now.
Yeah.
And Anno's the type like a George Lucas, like a David Lynch, that you just like you need to trust and just know that you're in the hands of a master, and that he's gonna lead you down a cool story. And yeah.
She like then the first time she gets into space, her first mission is there's like one of their ships has been flying in this sort of like time dilation that they do with the way they travel through space. It's been traveling for like like a decade or whatever. But in the actual it wasn't a decade, because I think it was like 4 or 5 years or something. So it was her dad's ship, and her dad was a captain of one of these ships, and he went down with the ship, and they detect like this fluctuation of like one of their ships flying through this sort of like time dilation thing. So they go to like the mission is like to investigate it, and it's her dad's ship, and they didn't know until they got there. And she immediately breaks off from the mission and almost gets herself like stuck in this sort of thing for however many years it would have been.
Yeah. Right.
And then there's like another character she meets who dies. He gave her like his bandana or something, and for like an entire episode she's just like crying and saying this dude's name because like he died, and they get attacked by the aliens, and she's still crying, and this is like the second to last episode. You're like, what the fuck is going on? But then she kind of has like this thing where she says like no more tears. And she puts the bandana on, and she gets in the Gunbuster, which is like this new experimental mech that is like 100 times bigger than the normal mechs, which are also already quite huge.
Right.
And she manages to, pull off the mission, and it's like that last arc of the story is kind of like something has changed ever since she kind of said no more tears. She doesn't cry for the rest of the story, I don't think. But even like her mentor character, Amano, she calls her big sister all the time. It's like they almost switch positions by the end, because like she is like fully in, and she isn't emotional anymore. She's like fully invested in the mission. But Amano kind of falls in love with their coach. The coach character, and she has to kind of be brought to her senses to do the mission. There's like
because the coach has like cancer or something at some point.
He has like space radiation cancer, and there's there's this crazy. I guess this kind of ties back into my point of like you're sacrificing your time that you could be spending with the people that you care about in order to defend them, and that is just the life of a soldier in general, is that you are giving up your time that you would otherwise have with the people you care about. But this is like times 100, because years can go by, decades can go by, and you've only aged 6 months.
Or
well,
millennia can go by the end.
We'll get to that. Yeah, and the coach only has like 6 months or something, and they do the mission, and in the middle of it, it's like she's doing the time measuring of like how many seconds they've been in this space travel thing.
Yeah.
And in her mind, it's like, well, this is the point of no return. Like, we've been here long enough that 6 months have passed, so like I'm never going to see him again. And she has to be brought back from the brink to kind of do what needs to be done. It's like a really fucking great story, like visually as well. The design they have of their ships, and like the way that their space combat is done, where like you can't even really see the bugs or like the giant space things. They're like shooting lasers from super far away, and you have to get the mechs close to actually fight them.
Yeah.
They send in like these little drone things. Very, very cool.
Yeah, and the mechs like transform into like spaceships to like go faster, and then when they get up to like range, they'll like transform into the mech. I'm like, I've been thinking about this recently. Like, I'm really like fascinated by this like obsession with like a mech concept in Japan.
Right.
I was like doing some Googling around to figure out like, has there been any like sci-fi like novels, like non-manga, that like do mechs? And some people pointed out like some aspects of Starship Troopers to some degree, but it's not really a mech.
Yeah, Starship Troopers kind of invented the idea of power armor, which is like, it's kind of like a mech, but like scaled more down to human size, where like you get the protection of like a robotic suit that you're controlling, but it's more form fitting. It's kind of like Iron Man's suit, but like bulkier almost.
Right. Yeah. And I guess like Iron Man is another example of like a mech concept. So I'm just kind of like obsessed with this like idea of why this is so appealing.
Right.
Because it's like obvious because it's like a giant robot that flies and shoots lasers and kills things. Like, that's just dope.
Right.
Like, I'm in. But I think he like gets into like the kind of more like heavy philosophical and like sensual aspects of like a boy and his mech concept in Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. And I was, again, like, there was this like series that was American, I think, called BattleTech, based on a so I got like really like autistically like fascinated in this concept called BattleTech, that also had some spin-off novels that were written, and it was based on this like tabletop game. It's kind of like Warhammer 40k. Again, Warhammer 40k might be like a touchstone for this concept. And I couldn't really find like too many examples. I found like one or two like discrete like sci-fi novels that were like American and had this concept as well. So I don't know. I just got like really obsessed with mechs as a concept.
Yeah, I liked the mech design in Avatar, the James Cameron movie, where they've got like it's
there's
like,
the one in Aliens as well that she gets in.
Yeah, that one was like a mech as a piece of like cargo loading equipment.
Yeah.
Where like it's specifically used for like lifting huge crates to load into their ships.
Yeah, I guess the fascination with it is just like man's relationship with technology.
Yeah, I think like it's the most tactile way to control something, because like with a car, you've got the steering wheel that is controlling the direction of the tires and stuff, and you're controlling the direct speed. But like the idea of piloting a mech is like every movement that you're making with your fingers and your arms and your legs is controlling the exact movement of it. So I think as a piece of sci-fi like history, because it's everywhere now, it's a very cool idea and can do so much with it. And
I think it's a way to do like the like, again, like man and technology, but without it being like transhumanist and like creepy.
Yeah, you are not the mech. The mech is just a separate thing that you're controlling. It's not like an extension of you. But at the same time, if you're spending your entire life as a mech pilot, you almost feel like it would be an extension of yourself.
Right.
To the point where they've got teenage girls doing push-ups in the mech suits at high school.
Yeah, it's like everyone like being on their phones all the time, and so
yeah, I guess that's a good way to put it. But like by the end of this show, they are humanity is like on the brink of total destruction by these aliens, and they've brought like billions of them into the Milky Way galaxy to fuck up humanity. And their plan is they have like this giant what was it? It was like a bunch of different, I guess the first thing they did.
You're talking about the pill thing?
The first thing they did was they made a giant black hole by destroying one of their ship's like warp drive things. So and the black hole kind of sucked in all the aliens. But then it was like the black hole itself is also starting to like consume planets closer and closer to Earth. So they also have to like go and
destroy the black
hole. But I guess the aliens know that they're coming to destroy the black hole. And the aliens are like, well, if the black hole's going to take them out, we might as well just stop them from destroying the black hole. And so, like, they're transporting this huge bomb that is made up of a bunch of different... It's like I think it was like over 100 of those warp drive things that they have. A degeneration field or something like that. And that was supposed to destroy the... It was supposed to cause a chain reaction that would destroy the...
It was they called it like the black hole bomb, basically.
Yeah, and it was like a giant black pill. It was like a huge giant space black pill, and the entire episode I was just laughing at the idea. It was like the fucking humanity's black pill coming to destroy the aliens.
And it looks like the giant pill that Pearl gives Mr. Krabs.
It does, yeah. It was literally just a giant pill, and
and the entire last episode is in black and white, so it's like even more stark. It's black pill.
What did you say that he shot it in black and white to be like a World War II film?
Yeah.
Which is really very odd, badass. And by the end,
there's a character named Jung Freud, who's not really all that relevant, but
she's around. She's around. Yeah. She becomes like a kind of friend to the main character by the end of it. But at first she's like a rival to them, and she shows up in a fucking Soviet mech with like a big fucking hammer and sickle on it. You're like, what? Wild. But by the end of the movie, the giant black pill was damaged by the alien attack, and it doesn't have enough of these like degeneration field like warp drive things to cause the chain reaction. So Noriko and Amano bring both of their mechs, or I guess Noriko's plan was she was going to bring her mech to the giant pill and use her degeneration field on her mech to like start the chain reaction, but then that would kill her because there would be no way for her to return. So Amano, her like a mentor lady kind of partner, she's like, no, I'll go with you, and then yours can start the chain reaction, and we'll use mine to separate and come back to Earth someday. So they do that, but knowing that it is going to be like thousands of years pass before they can potentially return to Earth. And they do it, and the end of the movie is them emerging in the year like 12,000.
Yeah.
It's like the year like 12,000 like 100 and something, and you're like, oh fuck, it's over. Like they made it back to Earth with their one like derelict mech ship. But for them, I don't know how long it must have felt for them.
I think it was like months or something.
Something like that. Say. But yeah, it was like 10,000 years had passed, and the entire Earth is black. It's nighttime. It's like the dark. The sun is on the other side of the planet, so it's all dark, and there's no light. So it's like the light of civilization has gone out, and they think, humanity died off at some point in the last 10,000 years. So even if we defeated the aliens, humans destroyed themselves. But then on a planetary scale, they start turning the lights on to spell out
welcome home or something.
It was written in katakana as well. One of the Japanese scripts. So like
the borrowed words Japanese script.
I think they also use katakana for like emphasis as well, so you can use it like to really emphasize something. So it's like it says welcome home on the planet, and it's like they really got the entire population of Earth 10,000 years after these people made their sacrifice to defeat the aliens. They got everyone on the planet to shut their lights off to make it look as if humanity was dead, just so they could spell out welcome home on the planet's surface. And it's a really great moment. I really liked it. And then it lingers on that shot for like 4 fucking minutes.
And they finally get home 10,000 years later, so Noriko can finally turn 18.
You know what? I think the time that had passed by the last episode, she was 18.
Yeah.
Because I distinctly remember in the last episode, she rips off a piece of... She's ripping out this warp core thing from her mech, but in doing so, inside piloting it, she's literally like reaching to her chest and ripping, and she like rips off a part of her fucking shirt.
Yeah.
You just see, it's fully exposed, and so it was very funny watching them extend this character's to teenage
coming
years.
Of age too.
This character's teenage years across decades, and then by the end of it, she spends like 10,000 years just
the longest coming of age of all time.
Exactly. I thought it was a really awesome story.
It was really cool.
There is a couple movies, I think. There's like manga. There is a sequel called Gunbuster.
Yeah. And I know Anno directed co-directed a movie, Gunbuster.
Okay.
Like it was like either a sequel or like a kind of like he did the rebuilds for Evangelion, kind of something like that. But yeah, all it did was make me want to watch Neon Genesis Evangelion finally, and I started watching it, and I'm really enjoying it because it's kind of him really like fine-tuning those like thematic elements. He was starting with Gunbuster and reaching like literary heights with it, really. Yeah, because like Evangelion's like it's like the Twin Peaks of anime. It's like the apex of the concept, and it like people really hate it for some reason. I think it's because it's like actually good and not like retarded.
People hate what now?
Evangelion.
Really?
Yeah, I mean it has its fans, of course, because it's really popular. But they're like, you like watch like a top 10 anime video on YouTube or something, and someone will give like a really like snarky anti-Evangelion take, which is how you know it's like a masterpiece.
Right. I don't understand the idea of being like, I fucking hate this piece of media. I'm gonna go all around and say how much I fucking hate it on every video someone saying they like it.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Like, oh.
So yeah. This is actually like a whole episode that's teasing a future episode on Neon Genesis Evangelion, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, this is like the sequel to our episode on 11 Pop, which itself was also a tease for the eventual Evangelion episode.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
A sequel prequel.
Do we have anything else to add? We've been going for almost an hour and a half now.
No, I don't think so. Gunbuster's great. We watched it on the Internet Archive, so you can just check it out there. And I think Nausicaä was on like Canadian Netflix, but I have it on DVD or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been a cool episode. The topics that we've discussed and the breadth we've covered from just talking about some anime bullshit.
Yeah, we started off with Nausicaä and Gunbuster, and we started talking about Starship Troopers actually quite a bit more than I thought I would end up bringing it up for. Because at first it was like, oh, haha, we watched that other bug movie.
Yeah.
It was like this whole deconstruction of Verhoeven's malevolent universe compared to the benevolence of Nausicaä. It's
yeah, because everyone for like a whole week, people were talking about Helldivers 2 and it being a like satire, like Starship Troopers is a satire, and they're both just like inept satires, and that's their problem.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think we will wrap it up there. Follow us on X. Elon Musk's X, and like us on YouTube.
Leave a
subscribe
comment
to the channel. Leave a comment. Leave a review on the podcast. Follow us on the podcast platforms. All that jazz. And we will be back next week. I have an idea for that episode, but not going to confirm it just yet.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. And then the week after that, we're doing Dune. We're doing the book.
Yes, that's coming up quicker than I thought.
yeah. We're doing the book, the Dune Part 1 and 2 that are the more recent adaptations, and we're also doing the David Lynch movie as well. So it's going to be probably an episode rivaling this one in length, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe longer. We'll see.
All right.
Yeah. Talk to you next week.
Yep. See you next time.